What is going on, Pats Nation? Welcome back into another episode here at Patriots Global. As always, I'm your boy, Colby Cochran. Some of you might know me better as Patriots Global. And the New England Patriots, man, they are coming off of one beautiful win, Week 5, Sunday Night Football, under the Knights against the Buffalo Bills. Us Patriots fans, we are riding an absolute high right now. But unfortunately, there is something that not a lot of people are talking about, and really not even talking about just how big of a loss this is for the New England Patriots, and that is the loss of running back Antonio Gibson. Now, for those who maybe remember from the game last night, Rhamondre Stevenson, after that fumble, is benched. The bulk of the carries then are given to Antonio Gibson, who's actually running the ball really effectively, really well. And then after the Patriots' first drive or two, Patriots are getting the football back here by the Buffalo Bills. It's a kick return. Antonio Gibson gets the ball. Full nosedive ahead. This guy's running with steam and unfortunately gets kind of picked up by a defender, kind of goes over the defender's shoulders, and we see Antonio Gibson go down. And you know that it's never good when a player immediately is flatlined, just laying on the ground. There's players coming out, calling for the medical staff. There's a bunch of Patriots players on the field. There's a bunch of Bills players on the field. There's the training staff. Mike Vrabel's coming out. You just knew at that point that this was not going to be good for Antonio Gibson. They ended up going to a commercial break, a long one at that, because of it, which also doesn't signify anything good. Luckily, Antonio Gibson was able to walk off under his own power. He didn't need to be carted off, but for me, that still didn't say a whole lot because we've seen players in the past, especially here in New England, where they're out for the entire season, but they were still able to walk off with trainers, kind of under their own power, maybe with like a little bit of help. And that's exactly what Antonio Gibson did. Goes into the blue medical tent, gets checked out, comes out. He's bawling his eyes out. You guys have seen the photos going everywhere. Immediately goes to the Patriots locker room. And as soon as that happens, we hear that he was out for the remainder of the game. And the fact that he was listed as out as soon as he was is never a good sign. And so we knew nothing good was going to happen. And it was officially confirmed here today per rap sheet that Patriots running back Antonio Gibson will miss the rest of the 2025 season with a torn ACL. And look, at the end of the day, Antonio Gibson wasn't the Patriots' number one back. He wasn't even their second back, especially when it comes to total usage in this offense through 5 weeks. But he was their third back. And I think that you look at this New England Patriots running back situation where you have Rhamondre Stevenson fumbling the football. We all know the narrative. Rhamondre, 10 fumbles since the start of 2024, has now lost 6 of them. There's an issue with him. They tried to bench him, but now you lose Antonio Gibson. So you really can't bench Rhamondre Stevenson because you still need production from your backfield. And then you have TreVeyon Henderson. TreVeyon Henderson, who's a rookie running back, who has shown that while I do think he will have a good NFL career, I don't think he's there just yet. He's a rookie. It's only 5 games. He's still mentally a tick behind. He's still learning, not to mention that he still feels like a one-dimensional running back. TreVeyon Henderson was known for being a guy in college at Ohio State that was really good at picking up the blitzes and protecting the quarterback, something that hasn't translated to the NFL just yet, something I'm not freaking out about, but something that he's just simply not ready for. So now you don't have a running back with Antonio Gibson that you can rely on to take the bulk of the carries in the game and then use TreVeyon Henderson as a spellback if you want to bench Rhamondre, because now Antonio Gibson is out for the season. So this has a massive trickle-down effect. And I think the bigger thing, too, about Antonio Gibson and what he brought to the Patriots wasn't just what he did as a change of pace running back, isn't just what he could do as a receiving back out of the backfield. Again, we all know, usage-wise, Antonio Gibson is the third most utilized back. Rhamondre and TreVeyon Henderson both getting more snaps every single week than Gibson. But it's also what Gibson did on special teams. We saw it this offseason in the preseason. We saw it a couple of weeks ago in Miami where he returned a kick return to the house for a touchdown. And ironically enough, when Antonio Gibson went down with this injury, the guy that was their kick returner was Rhamondre Stevenson. So for a guy that you were benching because he's fumbled now 3 times this season and in this same game, and that's a guy that they trusted to go out there and return kicks, I don't necessarily love that. But now we have to ask ourselves the question, who's going to be the third running back on this Patriots depth chart now? Now that Antonio Gibson's gone, you have to imagine it goes to another back because the 2 backs you have on this roster currently, you can't count on. You can't count on TreVeyon Henderson to do it by himself. You can't count on Rhamondre Stevenson because of the fumbling issues. Not to mention that running back is just one of those positions where you're always dealing with injuries. Guys, this is why during the offseason, I had told you, I said, the New England Patriots really could keep 4 or 5 running backs. They historically do that under Josh McDaniels. Running back's just one of those positions where guys are constantly getting injured. And this is exactly what we're talking about. So, something else that I did want to show you guys too is Antonio Gibson was at least in good spirits after the game. This is him and Andy Borregales after the game. Copyright, let me turn that off just in case. So this was him and Andy Borregales after the game. So you see him in crutches, but you see that he's ultimately in good spirits. And at the end of the day, that's good just based off of the injury and just how severe it was. You could tell he was in a lot of pain. And I also want to show you guys the injury to Antonio Gibson for those of you who maybe have not seen it. Let me pull that up real quick. So this is the play. I hope I don't get copyrighted for this, but I don't think I should. But for those who didn't know, this is the play. This was the kick return that happened. And many people think that right there, as you see TreVeyon Henderson trying to save him after the play. But many people think that the injury to Gibson happened as soon as contact happens to his knees by the Buffalo Bills defender. But I was actually watching a video by a doctor who was breaking down this injury. And ultimately, he's not there to work one-on-one with Gibson. So he doesn't know for certain. But based off of what he sees, this doctor believes that the injury to Gibson happened not right there, but it happens right there. So right there where you see Antonio Gibson kind of juke out and come back into the field of play, right there, that his knee buckles in. And that's where the injury occurred. And then obviously the hit ultimately didn't make it any better, as I'm sure after tearing your ACL, getting blown up by a defender with a helmet in the same knee, ultimately probably doesn't feel all that well. At the end of the day, I also do hope that Antonio Gibson is back on this team next year. I think that he's been a really, really good complementary back. I think the burst he has, I think the receiving ability that's been really, really underrated to his game, the special teams ability that he has. I think that this is one of the best Patriots all-around backs that they've had since Rex Burkhead. And I think that they were just really, starting to unlock what they can do with Antonio Gibson. And then an injury like this ultimately goes down. So when I'm looking at running backs on ultimately who could replace Antonio Gibson, I think if a guy can have that special teams ability, that would be huge, but it's not what I'm expecting. I think that the guy that is going to replace Antonio Gibson as a returner on special teams is probably a guy that's in-house. Like I said, yesterday, after Gibson goes down, they give the ability to Rhamondre Stevenson. Now, I hope that they don't continue to do that. In fact, what I hope they do is something that we saw during the preseason, and that's giving the ball to TreVeyon Henderson, giving this guy a little bit more looks, giving him the ability to kind of get going, because it just takes TreVeyon Henderson bursting one off here in the regular season for a kick return touchdown or a punt return touchdown to kind of start gaining momentum, and that can kind of change the trajectory that he's on. One thing is for certain, and that's, gosh, knock on wood, but TreVeyon Henderson hasn't dealt with fumbling issues. Rhamondre, Gibson both have had some of those issues this season. Henderson hasn't. So I would prefer the guy who's going to be our kick returner not be somebody that has a fumbling problem and somebody that has the speed that Antonio Gibson does. When we saw Antonio Gibson take it to the house a couple of weeks ago against Miami, it was his ability to kick it into second gear. It was the speed he had that allowed him to get down the field and take it to the house. Rhamondre, he has more speed for a guy with his style of play that puts his shoulders down and runs through a brick wall, but he's not a fast overall player. He's not someone that you think is going to take a kick return to the house for a touchdown. TreVeyon Henderson, though, we know can do that. So from a special teams standpoint, who I'm looking at to replace him there is definitely TreVeyon Henderson, but I do think we'll see multiple guys potentially get that opportunity. As for guys that can replace him, I think the Patriots have to look in-house first. And I think the first guy you have to look at is Terrell Jennings, because what's important to remember is that the New England Patriots are not looking for a lead back to replace. Okay? I know that that's not what you guys probably want to hear. I know a lot of you are probably saying, why don't we go out and get Alvin Kamara? Why don't we go out and get one of these more premier running backs and make this, blockbuster trade before the NFL trade deadline in a couple of weeks? And it's because that's not what the Patriots are looking for. The Patriots are not trying to replace running back 1. The Patriots are trying to replace running back 3. So that's the level that we should be looking for. I think if the Patriots are going to trade for a running back by the trade deadline, you're going to see them trade a fifth, sixth, maybe even a 7th round pick. You're not going to see them go out there and trade, a 2nd or 3rd round pick for one of these premier backs, because it's just not exactly what this team is looking for. So maybe a guy like Terrell Jennings is somebody that they can call up. Undrafted player who's been on this team for several years now. Originally came to the Patriots in 2024, appeared in 3 games last season. He carried the ball 13 times for 33 yards. Didn't get targeted once, though, in the passing game, but he's 6 foot, 217 pounds. He's a little bit of a bigger back. He can carry the ball in between the tackles. I don't think he's a great replacement for Antonio Gibson. I don't think he gives the playing style of Antonio Gibson. I think if you're trying to replace that, then TreVeyon Henderson is probably the guy you want to give maybe a few more carries to. I don't think TreVeyon Henderson is going to be your lead back now. That's just not the type of guy he is. But if you want to replace the speed and the style of Gibson, well, the guy in-house and the guy that can do that for you is TreVeyon. But if you're also looking for a guy that can just give you a little bit of depth at running back, be a rotational guy, and honestly can give you a little bit more depth behind Rhamondre Stevenson, because Terrell Jennings is a guy that can get those tough yards, can put his shoulders down, can run through a brick wall, then maybe that guy's already in-house and that guy's already on the practice squad. They can promote him, and now you have your 3rd down back here. So that's always an option for the Patriots, but if they feel like they need to get more out of this running back group, if they feel like Terrell Jennings doesn't give them just enough in his toolbox to make the final roster, or to make this active roster, I should say, then there's also a couple of guys that they can look at that are either free agents or are on another team's practice squad. Because as we all know, the Patriots can target any player from a team's practice squad, but they have to go on the Pats 53-man roster. Patriots can't claim a guy from a practice squad and put him on their practice squad. Has to be immediately on the 53. Now, one guy I do wonder if they go out and target, and you guys have brought this name up yourselves, is JaMycal Hasty. Now, from what I am seeing, JaMycal Hasty is currently on the practice squad of the Miami Dolphins, but again, Patriots sign him to the active roster, they would officially own the rights to him. JaMycal Hasty is a guy who was here during, the preseason, got some looks, so even this specific regime under Mike Vrabel and under Josh McDaniels, they have experience with him, right? Drake May has experience with him. But JaMycal Hasty was also here in 2024, so he has experience with the team. JaMycal Hasty is also somebody who can help you in the receiving game. JaMycal Hasty is a guy that is elusive off the line like Antonio Gibson, but he's also going to be a special teamer for you also. So you're kind of killing really all birds with the same stone if you think about it. If you are looking for a guy that has the same playing style as Antonio Gibson, if you're looking for a guy that can be a dual threat running back as your running back 3, then JaMycal Hasty is the guy that I feel like realistically the Patriots would want to go out there and target. And we've seen JaMycal Hasty in New England during the regular season get carries, and he's actually had some good moments. So that's a guy that I fully expect to be at the top of the list for the Patriots. Some other guys that they could target could be Jeff Wilson. He is on the practice squad for Miami, veteran running back who's done some pretty good things, but is getting older. Hasn't really done much in the league for a while, but if you want a guy who hangs onto the football, knows the expectations, he's a veteran, can kind of be a leader in that backfield, then Jeff Wilson is another guy that you can certainly look at, the former 49er. You could look at Trey Sermon from the Steelers, a guy that I also think could be at the top of the list for the Patriots is Ameer Abdullah, okay? So he's currently on the practice squad for the Indianapolis Colts, but he is somebody that has experience not with Drake May, not with the players currently in New England, but he does have experience in this exact system because Ameer Abdullah used to be the running back when Josh McDaniels was the head coach with the Raiders. So McDaniels is very, very familiar with him. He's familiar with his strengths and with his weaknesses. I don't think Ameer Abdullah is a great running back when he's asked to be a number 1, but if you're asking him to be a spellback, if you're asking him to be a depth rotational piece, then I actually think that can complement him pretty well. So I wouldn't mind seeing Ameer Abdullah also added to this team. Now, another guy this team could potentially add is a former first-round pick that, let's be honest, he pretty much busted out, and that's Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Now, believe it or not, he's actually not on the Kansas City Chiefs 53-man roster, but he is with Kansas City still. He's just on their practice squad. So another way that the Patriots can kind of look to get a veteran in the building that has regular season, postseason, Super Bowl experience, which could also go a long way. Another guy who has some of that elusiveness, but he also has that ability to put his shoulders down and get some of those tough yards. Wouldn't mind seeing Clyde Edwards-Helaire here as running back 3. Myles Gaskins from the Seahawks. That's another option that the Patriots can look at. And then there are a couple of free agents that I do want to share here with you guys also. Let me pull this up. So there we go. Let me make sure you guys can see this. All right, perfect. So apparently, okay, according to Spot Track, these are available free agents on the open market, meaning that the Patriots could sign any of these guys to the 53-man roster or the practice squad. Although Amir Abdullah, last time I checked, was on a practice squad, so maybe that just isn't updated. But Zach Moss is a guy that I do know is a free agent, a guy that had some really, really good moments in the past. Whether that was with Cincinnati, whether that was with the Colts, wouldn't mind seeing the Patriots bring him in there either. 27 years old. Again, not really good when he's your number one back, but I think that he'd be a complimentary piece to somebody like Rhamondre Stevenson. Again, Zach Moss isn't this fast, elusive guy who's going to, break through a hole and take the ball for 50 yards like an Antonio Gibson or a TreVeyon Henderson, but he's a guy who's, again, going to be tough to bring down because he just keeps the feet moving, kind of like Rhamondre Stevenson. Jamal Williams is another guy the Patriots can look at. He's a veteran. Let's be honest, he's old as hell. I'm passing on Jamal Williams. Gus Edwards is another guy that the Patriots could look at, but I don't know, just constantly deals with injuries. I think he's a really inconsistent running back. He shows flashes, but he is also older. That's a guy that I would probably... You can have worse options. Again, we're talking about running back 3, not running back 1. So, it could be worse, but I think there's better options out there. Another guy, too, that I feel like a lot of people aren't talking about, TreVeyon Williams, okay? If the Patriots can somehow get TreVeyon Williams back on this team, that might be their first priority. TreVeyon Williams, who was signed by the Patriots back in, I want to say, April, June, around that time, a veteran running back that spent a lot of time with the Cincinnati Bengals. He was mainly a special teamer, but got some go around on the ground also. Again, another guy that I think could perfectly fit in that mold of Antonio Gibson and fill in that replacement, not just as that rotational running back 3, but also the ability on special teams. Great thing also about TreVeyon Williams is that he has experience within this exact New England Patriots system. Now, he was only here for a few months before getting released during roster cutdowns. There was a few practices. He wasn't there early on during spring practices, but nonetheless has experience in this system. So it wouldn't surprise me if that's the route the Patriots go, because a lot of times teams will elect to bring in a guy that they are familiar with and a guy that is familiar with them rather than going with a guy that maybe is more talented. Why? Because at the end of the day, you rather go with what you know. You want to know, or you want to go with what is ultimately expected. You can bring in a guy that's more talented, but you don't know how he's going to gel with the rest of the team. You don't know if he's going to fit your system. So a lot of times these teams will go down the list when they need a new player and say, we have experience with that guy. This guy knows the system. Let's bring him in first. So those are some of the backs that you could potentially look at to replace Antonio Gibson. But guys, I really can't exaggerate this enough. I really can't. Losing Antonio Gibson is big for the Patriots. Even if we are looking at his numbers from this season, and not even on special teams, but just on the ground. I mean, he had 21 yards against Buffalo. He had 27 yards against Carolina, 28 yards against Pittsburgh, 27 against Miami, and 3 against Vegas. Again, I don't think that those numbers really go to show the value that Antonio Gibson had, because again, and I know I keep saying this, I sound like a broken record, but he was running back 3. So the reason that he wasn't lighting up the stat sheet is because he had Rhamondre Stevenson and TreVeyon Henderson ahead of him. So he wasn't really asked to come in here and get a whole lot of carries. I mean, 6 carries against Buffalo, 6 carries against Carolina, 7 against Pittsburgh, 5 against Miami, and 1 against Vegas. Despite that, Antonio Gibson, 25 carries through 5 weeks of this season, 106 yards, 1 touchdown, and he was averaging 4.2 yards per carry. And the thing about playing running back is it's hard to give a running back few snaps and ask him to go out there and be dominant. Because playing running back, a lot of times you just have to give those guys more carries because they have to be able to tire out a defense. They have to be able to pick up tendencies. They have to build up momentum. They got to pick up on a defense's patterns. And I thought that Antonio Gibson, despite not getting a lot of opportunities, has done really, really well this season. And even if you want to look at what he did in 2024 under Alex Van Pelt and Gerard Mayo, he was averaging 4.5 yards per carry. So I think that there was an argument, even before Antonio Gibson got injured, that he deserved more playing time here in New England, that they should have found ways to get him more involved. But let's go ahead and look at some of your guys' chats before we end off today's video. Old Man Mob says Kamara is not getting traded here. He's going out as a Saint. I would be surprised if Kamara ultimately did get traded. I feel like the Saints don't have a lot going for them. But one thing that fan base does have is they have a fan favorite in Alvin Kamara. What they also have is they have a guy that can be a reliable security blanket for a team, a system that is rebuilding. They obviously have a lot of young quarterbacks in that system that are going to go out there and they're going to get a young quarterback in the 2026 draft. And having somebody like Kamara can really help out a young quarterback. I don't see why they would move on, especially because he's getting older. Believe it or not, guys, and this is a crazy stat that I didn't realize till a couple of days ago. Did you guys realize that Alvin Kamara has never had 1,000 rushing yards in his career? So serious. Look it up if you guys don't believe me. I swear I'm not gaslighting you guys. Alvin Kamara has never had 1,000 rushing yards in a single season. Given that, given his age, given his contract, they are not getting any better than a 3rd round pick. And I'm just not sure that what he gives the Saints is outvalued by a 3rd round pick. So I agree. I don't see him going anywhere. AJ Dillon, that's certainly a guy that the Patriots could target. Now he is with a team. Trying to remember who he's with the Eagles right now, if I remember correctly, and he is. Yeah, so AJ Dillon's with the Eagles right now. Honestly, I don't see them trading him either. I think that the Eagles are one of the best rushing attacks offensively in the entire NFL, and that's also how they want to win. You look at what's going on in Philadelphia with their wide receiver core. A.J. Brown's not happy. Devontae Smith is not happy. Why? They're not getting production. They're not getting a lot of usage in the offense because that offense is constantly running the football. Given the injury history of Saquon Barkley, too, I don't think you want to trade someone like A.J. Dillon. Like, I believe that they traded recently for Tank Bigsby, not to then go trade, A.J. Dillon, who's running back 2 on that depth chart, but was to give them more depth at that position. So, personally, don't see that one happening either. Now, I did see another question earlier on saying, why can't TreVeyon Henderson be the New England Patriots' #1 running back? Okay. And it's a valid question. The Patriots used a 2nd round pick on him. Why can't the New England Patriots demote Rhamondre Stevenson to running back 2, pick up a running back 3, and just run this offense through TreVeyon Henderson? And the reason that you can't do that, and I listed some of these reasons out earlier in this video, is one, because you still see that he's a rookie. The thing about Rhamondre Stevenson is that although he has a fumbling problem, one thing we cannot say, okay? One thing we cannot say is that Rhamondre Stevenson is a bad running back. He's a good running back, and he gets production. The issue with Rhamondre is simply just the fumbles. If he didn't fumble, we wouldn't be talking about demoting Rhamondre Stevenson. We wouldn't be talking about needing a new running back. And look, I know that the yards per carry haven't been good this year. He's only averaging 3.7 yards per carry. He averaged 3.9 last year in 2024. But that's also a big reason because of the blocking and the offensive line, who hasn't been very good in run blocking. Now, there's a reason why this entire running back core for New England is struggling. It's not just one specific guy. And getting back here to TreVeyon Henderson, because he has issues right now in pass blocking, that has allowed Rhamondre Stevenson to get on the field more, to where you can't fully bench Rhamondre Stevenson. You can't even get rid of Rhamondre Stevenson because he is still your best overall running back and most consistent running back right now, especially with Gibson out of the picture. He's also your best pass blocking running back. Right now, Rhamondre is their best dual threat running back until TreVeyon Henderson can develop his game a little bit more, get past that rookie stage, and show us the guy that we drafted from Ohio State. But right now, that's not who Henderson is. He isn't the guy from Ohio State. And the other part, too, is that during TreVeyon Henderson's time at Ohio State, he dealt with a lot of injuries. In fact, he wasn't as good of a running back until Quinshon Judkins got there. Ohio State went into the transfer portal, got Quinshon Judkins for a reason. It wasn't to take over the role of TreVeyon Henderson. It was to complement TreVeyon Henderson. Because Henderson and Judkins split the backfield at Ohio State essentially 50-50. And once they did that, TreVeyon Henderson was a better running back. He was a more consistent running back. He stopped dealing with injuries. When the Patriots drafted Henderson, it wasn't to bring this guy in who's going to be your bell cow running back, your number one guy every single week. It was to be a complimentary back. It was to be a spell back. I think that's the goal. The goal is to get TreVeyon Henderson to a point where Rhamondre Stevenson or whoever it might be can be your Quinshon Judkins, and then Henderson can be TreVeyon Henderson. But Henderson, I just don't see him ever getting to a point where he's going to be your bell cow guy and gets, 80% of the carries every single year. It's just not something that, if you know his game at the college level that made him a second-round pick, is something that's just going to change now that he's transitioned to the NFL. But let's see. We can answer a couple more questions before we log off. I just wanted to hit on the Antonio Gibson situation, talk about a couple of running backs that I did think could potentially replace him also, and just kind of lay my 2 cents on where this running back group kind of is. Let's see. Brooke comes in and says, where is Cordero Patterson these days? If I remember correctly, I think Cordero Patterson is a free agent. Let me make sure. I don't want to blow smoke up anybody's butt here. So it looks like he's currently a free agent right now, but he's also 34 years old, so you have to keep that into account. I said this during yesterday's watch party, is that I think there's worse options than Cordero Patterson, and if they brought him in, at the end of the day, I wouldn't hate it, but he's 34 years old. He's not the same player. He's not the player that he was on his one-year deal here in New England in 2018. He's significantly older now. He's past his prime, to where the big part, the big playing style of Cordero Patterson was purely based off of his speed, right? That's why he was such a good kick returner. That's why you could use him as a deep threat in the receiving game. That's why you could use him at running back. He doesn't have that same game to him still. But if the Patriots want a guy that can give them versatility at wide receiver, can be this chess piece that gets some run there in the backfield, but also can be a kick returner for you, Cordero Patterson could be that guy. And he has experience with Josh McDaniels from when Cordell Patterson was here under Tom Brady and Josh back in 2018 when they won Super Bowl 53. So it certainly is an option, but I do just think that due to his age, there's a reason that Cordero Patterson isn't even on a practice squad right now. And so I kind of just wonder if his career's over. In fact, what were Cordero Patterson's numbers last year? So in 2024, Cordero Patterson was in Pittsburgh. So a one-year deal with Pittsburgh. He had a total of 32 carries. So they used him very sparingly on the ground. He had a total of 135 yards and was averaging about 4.2 yards per carry. So take that, with what you will, but certainly a name to keep in mind, because I don't think he's completely out of the picture. I just wonder if the Patriots are looking at this saying we want a little bit more juice in our backfield, because the backfield's already struggling for New England. I think if you had a 34-year-old running back who isn't even a full-time running back, he's just a chess piece, kind of like a Deebo Samuel. I think they could probably want a little bit more out of that roster spot. But guys, that is going to end it off for today's video. I want to kick it off to you guys. What are your thoughts about Antonio Gibson being out for the season, the entire season, with an ACL injury, ACL tear, I should say? Let me know in the comment section below. Let me know what you think about some of the options we talked about to replace him. Do you guys want to bring back Zeke Elliott? Should we get him out of retirement? Totally joking. I've seen people throw that idea around. I don't want it. I don't need it either. So let me know your guys' thoughts in the comment section below. Hit that subscribe button. Follow me here on YouTube. Follow me on TikTok. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Patriots Global. But until next time, I will see you guys later on this week to continue talking about our New England Patriots. Go Pats, baby.